The United States is known to have possessed three types of weapons of mass destruction: nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, and biological weapons. The U.S. is the only country to have used nuclear weapons in combat in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. It had secretly developed the earliest form of the atomic weapon during the 1940s under the title Manhattan Project. The United States pioneered the development of both the nuclear fission and hydrogen bombs. It was the world's first and only nuclear power for 4 years before being joined in the nuclear club by the Soviet Union. The United States has the second largest number of deployed nuclear weapons in the world, after Russia. Nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons have been used twice in wartime. 2 nuclear weapons were used by the United States against Japan in World War II in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Altogether, the 2 bombings killed an estimated 140,000 civilians and military personnel and injured another 130,000. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the first and only time the U.S. employed weapons of mass destruction against an enemy state in warfare. The U.S. conducted an extensive nuclear testing program. 1,054 tests were conducted between 1945 and 1992. The exact number of nuclear devices detonated is unclear because some tests involved multiple devices while a few failed to explode or were designed not to create a nuclear explosion. The last nuclear test by the United States was on September 23, 1992. The U.S. has signed but not ratified the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. Currently, the United States nuclear arsenal is deployed in 3 areas. Land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. Sea-based, nuclear submarine-launched ballistic missiles, or SLBMs. And, air-based nuclear weapons of the U.S. Air Force's Heavy Bomber Group. The United States is one of the 5 nuclear weapon states under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which the U.S. ratified in 1968. On October 13, 1999, the U.S. Senate rejected ratification of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, having previously ratified the Partial Test Ban Treaty in 1963. The U.S. has not, however, tested a nuclear weapon since 1992. Though it has tested many non-nuclear components and has developed powerful supercomputers in an attempt to duplicate the knowledge gained from testing without conducting the actual tests themselves. In the early 1990s, the U.S. stopped developing new nuclear weapons and now devotes most of its nuclear efforts into stockpile stewardship, maintaining and dismantling its now aging arsenal. The administration of George W. Bush decided in 2003 to engage in research towards a new generation of small nuclear weapons, especially earth penetrators. The budget passed by the United States Congress in 2004 eliminated funding for some of this research, including the bunker-busting or earth-penetrating weapons. The exact number of nuclear weapons possessed by the United States is difficult to determine. Different treaties and organizations have different criteria for reporting nuclear weapons, especially those held in reserve, and those being dismantled or rebuilt. As of 1999, the U.S. was said to have 12,000 nuclear weapons of all types stockpiled. In its Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty Declaration for 2003, the U.S. listed 5968 deployed warheads as defined by START rules. For 2007, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists listed the U.S. with about 5,400 total nuclear warheads, around 3,575 strategic and 500 non-strategic warheads, and about 1,260 additional warheads held in the inactive stockpile. Other warheads are in some step of the disassembly process. The exact number as of September 30, 2009, was 5,113 warheads, according to a U.S. fact sheet released May 3, 2010. In 2002, the United States and Russia agreed in the SALT Treaty to reduce their deployed stockpiles to not more than 2,200 warheads each. In 2003, the U.S. rejected Russian proposals to further reduce both nations' nuclear stockpiles to 1,500 each. In 2007, for the first time in 15 years, the United States built new warheads. These replaced some older warheads as part of the Minuteman III upgrade program. 2007 also saw the first Minuteman III missiles removed from service as part of the drawdown. Overall, stockpiles and deployment systems continue to decline in number under the terms of the New START Treaty. In 2014, Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists released a report, stating that there are a total of 2,530 warheads kept in reserve, and 2,120 actively deployed. Of the warheads actively deployed, the number of strategic warheads rests at 1,920. The amount of warheads being actively disabled rests at about 2,700 warheads, which brings the total United States inventory to about 7,400 warheads. Land-based ICBMs. The U.S. Air Force currently operates 450 ICBMs, located primarily in the northern Rocky Mountain states and the Dakotas. These are all of the Minuteman III ICBM variants. Peacekeeper missiles were phased out of the Air Force inventory in 2005. All USAF Minuteman II missiles have been destroyed in accordance with the START Treaty and their launch silos imploded and buried, then sold to the public. To comply with the START II, most U.S. multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, or MIRVs, have been eliminated and replaced with single warhead missiles. However, since the abandonment of the START II treaty, the U.S. is said to be considering retaining 500 warheads on 450 missiles. The U.S. goal under the START treaty is to reduce from 1,600 warheads deployed on over 500 missiles in 2003 to 500 warheads on 450 missiles in 2012. The first Minuteman III were removed under this plan in 2007 while, at the same time, the warheads deployed on Minuteman IIIs began to be upgraded from smaller W-62s to larger W-87s from decommissioned Peacekeeper missiles. The number of deployed Minuteman ICBMs are scheduled to reduce to 400 by 2018. Heavy Bomber Group. The U.S. Air Force also operates a strategic nuclear bomber fleet. The bomber force consists of 93 B-52 Stratofortresses, and 20 B-2 Spirits. 64 billion Albanian Lex-1s were retrofitted to operate in a solely conventional mode by 2007 and are no longer counted as nuclear platforms. In addition to this, the U.S. military can also deploy smaller tactical nuclear weapons either through cruise missiles or with conventional fighter bombers. The U.S. maintains about 400 nuclear gravity bombs capable of use by F-15, F-16, and F-35. Some 350 of these bombs are deployed at 7 air bases in 6 European NATO countries. Of these, 180 tactical B-61 nuclear bombs fall under a nuclear sharing arrangement. As of 2014, 96 B-52s and B-2s may have nuclear weapons deployed on them. The number of nuclear-capable deployed B-52s and B-2s will shrink to 60 by 2018. Sea-based ICBMs. The U.S. Navy currently has 18 Ohio-class submarines deployed, of which 14 are ballistic missile submarines. Each submarine is equipped with a maximum complement of 24 Trident II missiles. Approximately 12 U.S. attack submarines were equipped to launch nuclear Tomahawk missiles, but these weapons were removed from service by 2013. Sea-launched weapons make up the majority of weapons declared under START II rules. Some Trident missiles are equipped with a W-88 warhead. The number of deployed and non-deployed SLBMs on the Ohio-class SSBNs as of 2014 is 336. This will shrink by 2018 to 280, 240 which will be deployed. Biological weapons. The United States Offensive Biological Weapons Program was instigated by President Franklin Roosevelt and the U.S. Secretary of War in October 1941. Research occurred at several sites. A production facility was built at Terre Haute, Indiana, but testing with a benign agent demonstrated contamination of the facility, so no production occurred during World War II. A more advanced production facility was constructed in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, which began producing biological agents in 1954. Fort Detrick, Maryland later became a production facility as well as a research site. The U.S. developed anti-personnel and anti-crop biological weapons. Several deployment systems were developed including aerial spray tanks, aerosol spray canisters, grenades, rocket warheads and cluster bombs. In mid-1969, the UK and the Warsaw Pact, separately, introduced proposals to the UN to ban biological weapons, which would lead to a treaty in 1972. The U.S. cancelled its offensive biological weapons program by executive order in November 1969 and February 1970 and ordered the destruction of all offensive biological weapons, which occurred between May 1971 and February 1973. The U.S. ratified the Geneva Protocol on January 22, 1975. The U.S. ratified the Biological Weapons Convention which came into effect in March 1975. Negotiations for a legally binding verification protocol to the BWC proceeded for years. In 2001, negotiations ended when the Bush administration rejected an effort by other signatories to create a protocol for verification, arguing that it could be abused to interfere with legitimate biological research. The U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, located in Fort Detrick, Maryland, produces small quantities of biological agents, for use in biological weapons defense research. According to the U.S. government, this research is performed in full accordance with the BWC. In September 2001, shortly after the September 11 terrorist attacks on the United States, there was a series of mysterious anthrax attacks aimed at U.S. media offices and the U.S. Senate which killed 5 people. The anthrax used in the attacks was the Ames strain, which was first studied at Fort Detrick and then distributed to other labs around the world. See 2001 anthrax attacks for more information. Chemical weapons. In World War I, the U.S. produced its own chemical munitions, including phosgene and mustard gas. The U.S. only created about 4% of the total chemical weapons produced for that war and just over 1% of the era's most effective weapon, mustard gas. Although the U.S. had begun a large-scale production of Lewizard, for use in an offensive planned for early 1919, it in fact never deployed any chemical weapons. Chemical weapons were not used by the Allies or Germany during World War II, but such weapons were deployed to Europe from the United States. In 1943, German bombers attacked the port of Bari in southern Italy, sinking several American ships among them John Harvey, which was carrying mustard gas. The presence of the gas was highly classified, and, according to the U.S. military account, 69 deaths were attributed in whole or in part to the mustard gas, most of them American merchant seamen out of 628 mustard gas military casualties. The affair was kept secret at the time and for many years. After the war, the U.S. both participated in arms control talks involving chemical weapons and continued to stockpile them, eventually exceeding 30,000 tons of material. After the war, all of the former Allies pursued further research on the 3 new nerve agents developed by the Nazis: tabun, sarin, and soman. Over the following decades, thousands of American military volunteers were exposed to warfare agents during Cold War testing programs, as well as in accidents. The U.S. also investigated a wide range of possible non-lethal, psychobehavioral chemical incapacitating agents including psychedelic indoles such as LSD and marijuana derivatives, as well as several glycolate anticholinergics. One of the anticholinergic compounds, 3-quinacridonyl benzylate, was assigned the NATO code BZ and was weaponized at the beginning of the 1960s for possible battlefield use. Alleged use of chemical agents by the U.S. in the Korean and Vietnam conflicts has never been substantiated. In late 1969, President Richard Nixon unilaterally renounced the first use of chemical weapons. He issued a unilateral decree halting production and transport of chemical weapons which remains in effect. From 1967 to 1970 in Operation Chase, the U.S. disposed of chemical weapons by sinking ships laden with the weapons in the deep Atlantic. The U.S. began to research safer disposal methods for chemical weapons in the 1970s, destroying several thousand tons of mustard gas by incineration and nearly 4,200 tons of nerve agent by chemical neutralization. The U.S. entered the Geneva Protocol in 1975. This was the first operative international treaty on chemical weapons to which the U.S. was party. Stockpile reductions began in the 1980s, with the removal of some outdated munitions and destruction of the entire stock of BZ beginning in 1988. In 1990, destruction of chemical agents stored on Johnston Atoll in the Pacific began, 7 years before the Chemical Weapons Convention came into effect. In 1986, President Ronald Reagan began removal of the U.S. stockpile of chemical weapons from Germany. In 1991, President George H. W. Bush unilaterally committed the U.S. to destroying all chemical weapons and renounced the right to chemical weapon retaliation. In 1993, the U.S. signed the CWC, which required the destruction of all chemical weapon agents, dispersal systems, chemical weapons production facilities by 2012. Both Moscow and US missed the CWC's extended deadline of April 2012 to destroy all of their chemical weapons. The United States destroyed 89.75% of the original stockpile of nearly 31,100 metric tons of nerve and mustard agents under the terms of the treaty. Chemical weapons destruction resumed in 2015 with expected completion by 2023. See also, Defense Threat Reduction Agency, the U.S. Department of Defense's official combat support agency for countering weapons of mass destruction. Dugway Sheep Incident, Enduring Stockpile, the name of the United States' remaining arsenal of nuclear weapons following the end of the Cold War. List of U.S. biological weapons topics, Operation Paperclip, the code name under which the U.S. intelligence and military services extricated scientists from Germany, during and after the final stages of World War II. Russia and weapons of mass destruction, United States Army Chemical Corps, United States Missile Defense. References: Michael Barletta and Christina Ellington. Obtain microbial seed stock for standard or novel agent. Iraq's Biological Weapons Program. Center for Non-Proliferation Studies, Monterey Institute of International Studies. Retrieved September 18, 2006. Center for Non-Proliferation Studies. BW Agents. Iraq Profile. Nuclear Threat Initiative. Archived from the original on March 8, 2005. Retrieved September 18, 2006. Henry A. Kissinger. Draft NSDM Re-United States Policy on Warfare Program and Bacteriological Biological Research Program. Nixon Presidential Materials, NSC Files. The National Security Archive. Retrieved September 18, 2006. Note: Declassified United States Government Document, Naval Armed Guards Service, Tragedy at Bari, Italy on December 2, 1943. Frequently Asked Questions. United States Department of the Navy, Naval Historical Center. August 8, 2006. Retrieved September 18, 2006. Note: Original source, Office of the Chief of Naval Operations. History of the Armed Guard Afloat, World War II. 166-169. Niederost, Eric. German Raid on Bari. World War II. Retrieved September 18, 2006. Note: Original URL redirected to the URL shown here. Article lacks date or volume reference. External links: New START Treaty Aggregate Numbers of Strategic Offensive Arms, Video Archive of the U.S.'s Nuclear Testing at sonicbomb.com, Iraq Links Germs for Weapons to U.S. and France by Philip Shannon, The New York Times, March 16, 2003. Late edition final, Section 1, pages 18, retrieved October 8, 2006, United States Nuclear Forces Guide, Abolishing Weapons of Mass Destruction, Addressing Cold War and Other Wartime Legacies in the 21st Century by Mikhail S. Gorbachev, Nuclear Threat Initiative on United States, Nuclear Testing History, U.S. Army Chemical Weapons Agency website, Map of U.S. WMDs from NY&I Media, Nuclear Notebook, U.S. Nuclear Forces, 2006 by Robert S. Norris and Hans M. Christensen. Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, January-February 2006. Lessons Lost, by Joseph Sarinchan. Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists, November-December 2005. Nuclearfiles.org. Current information on nuclear stockpiles in the United States, U.S. nuclear weapons in Europe. New report provides unprecedented details. Nuclear February 2005, Putin, U.S. pushing others into nuclear ambitions, new nuclear warhead design for U.S. U.S. government settles on design for new nuclear warheads, U.S. announces plans to build new nuclear warheads, U.S. picks design for new generation of nuclear warheads, Bush administration picks Lawrence Livermore warhead design, trends in U.S. nuclear policy, analysis by William C. Potter, IFRI Proliferation Papers. Now Degree 11, 2005, the Woodrow Wilson Center's Nuclear Proliferation International History Project or NPIHP is a global network of individuals and institutions engaged in the study of international nuclear history through archival documents, oral history interviews and other empirical sources.